Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the Art of Ronin Leadership Podcast, but this is not a popularity contest. Your job is to treat everybody fairly, equally, give them the ability to succeed, give them the tools to succeed, but your job is to make the critical decisions, and those decisions are not always going to be liked by everybody. Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the Art of Ronin Leadership Podcast. It is a beautiful Tuesday afternoon in Las Vegas, Nevada. I thought I'd take the time to do a relatively short podcast. We did one yesterday with a really great friend of mine. A lot of you know him if you're in the security industry, Chuck Andrews. We talked a lot about leadership, and how he built his brand, the importance of mentoring. That podcast should be coming out soon, and hopefully you're liking the content that we're putting out. I'm getting some good feedback. Even got a feedback from a person that said, hey, kind of checked your website and there was like one misspelled word on there, and but I thought that was pretty cool that they were actually looking at our website and taking a look and providing some positive feedback. But keep the comments coming. Obviously, if you are enjoying this podcast, please hit the subscribe button and please tell others about the podcast so we can continue to grow our audience. Today I thought I would talk about criticism. And as a leader, we never like to face criticism. Some people take criticism quite hard. But I thought I would start out with a passage that I'm very familiar with, and I think a lot of you, if you've done any number of studies on leadership, probably have heard this before. But let me just start with just this kind of preamble, as it were. On April 23rd, 1910, Theodore Roosevelt gave what would become one of the most widely quoted speeches of his career. The former president, who left office in 1909, had spent a year hunting in Central Africa before embarking on a tour of Northern Africa and Europe in 1910, attending events and giving speeches in places like Cairo, Berlin, Naples, and Oxford. He stopped in Paris on April 23rd and at 3 p.m. at the Sorbonne, before a crowd that included, according to the Edmund Morris biography, Colonel Roosevelt, ministers in court dress, Army and Navy officers in full uniform, 900 students, and an audience of 2,000 ticket holders. Roosevelt delivered a speech called Citizenship in a Republic, which, among some, would come to be known as, quote, the man in the arena. In addition to touching on his own family history, war, human and property rights, the responsibilities of citizenship, and France's falling birth rate, Roosevelt railed against cynics who looked down at men who were trying to make the world a better place. Quote, the poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer, he said. A cynical habit of thought and speech, a readiness to criticize work which the critic himself never tries to perform, an intellectual aloofness which will not accept contact with life's realities. All these are marks not of superiority, but of weakness. Then he delivered an inspirational and impassioned message that drew huge applause. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. The speech was wildly successful, and it is something that I have taken to heart many years ago when I first came across it, probably over 20 years ago. And at certain times when I'm mentoring individuals and they hit a kind of rough patch in their leadership career where they feel like they're inundated with criticism, they feel that maybe every step they take is the wrong move, and they're afraid of what people might say. And I would send them, this part of this speech from Teddy Roosevelt, who I consider to be one of the greatest leaders of our time, in the Western world in the 20th century. And one of the reasons I wanted to touch on criticism is that if you are in a leadership position, you will be criticized at some point. If you are not, then you're probably not doing a really good job as a leader. If you want to be liked by everybody, which we all do. I mean, at the end of the day, I look at my leadership journey, and those of you who've read my book, The Art of Ronin Leadership, know that I talk about, certain times in my life where I have made mistakes, or where, I've kind of done the wrong thing, maybe for the right reasons, but it still was executed poorly. And I learned from those mistakes. But, my personal, DNA and psychology is that, yes, I want everyone to like me and to respect me and to treat me fairly. But that's unrealistic. I mean, this is real life, and as Roosevelt so brilliantly delineated, you are going to, especially as a leader, you're going to have detractors. Not everybody's going to believe what you believe in. Not everyone is going to go with your strategic goals. If you're running an enterprise, running a business unit, not everyone's just going to like you because they don't like you. They don't like your personality, right? That's just the way it goes. That's kind of life. Building consensus is always a wonderful thing. And I think we should always try to strive as leaders to build consensus when we're dealing with complex business issues, something that has to do with strategy of your organization in the long term. There should be a lot of rigorous give and take and debate, but ultimately you have to make the decision. I can remember one time early in my career at Microsoft as the chief security officer, we were, at that time, we were still growing. So we were more, I guess the early 2000s, we were really more US centric. We were called corporate security then. We had a worldwide mandate, but in terms of our ability to execute globally and effectively in the security realm and the responsibilities that we had, we were not able to do that. We had some boots on the ground. We didn't necessarily have the right boots on the ground, but we were very US centric. So if there was an investigation, for instance, to be done in, let's say, Europe or Asia, we'd fly investigators from, our Redmond, Washington headquarters out there to do the investigations. Our investigators are top notch, but they didn't know the turf. They don't know the subsidiary, the leaders of the subsidiaries and that they're going to. They don't know the players there. They may not even know the culture there. And so part of the debate at that time was whether we should really kind of globalize our operations. If we were truly going to be a global security organization, which we eventually changed our name from corporate security to global security in order to really emphasize the global nature of our organization. If we were truly going to be that, then we needed to expand. We needed more of a presence in our regions. In my opinion, we needed people from those regions who have the requisite skills that we needed, who could speak the language, understood the culture, had the subject matter expertise, whether it's investigations or crisis management or regional security management, all those things. Also, we needed people, boots on the ground, who could establish relationships with the leaders of our subsidiaries overseas, so that from a business enabler standpoint, we could provide the regional GMs and the regional directors and the regional vice presidents and presidents what they needed from us. But we needed, obviously a new look, we needed different people, and we needed the mindset that we were going to be global and not US centric. And I remember this was actually a bone of contention and part of a debate that we had within global security. At that time, we were probably only 19, 20 people, and most of them were my direct reports, if not all, at one point. So I remember this day we had the conversation, all of us, in the room, in a conference room in Redmond, and really had this good, rigorous debate about whether we should globalize or stay U.S.-centric. And I think people who were voting for the U.S.-centric part were more, I think they were well-meaning, but they felt maybe they were going to lose some control if we put out regional investigative teams or regional crisis management teams or what have you, as opposed to everything being centralized at Microsoft headquarters in Redmond. Good debate. Ultimately, I was the decision maker. I decided we were going to expand and globalize, and that's the way we went. And I know some people didn't agree with it. And I know I took some criticism at the time for doing that. But at the end of the day, you as a leader have to make the hard decisions based on input from your team, your troops. Let them weigh in on the issues of the day, but you ultimately have to make the critical decisions for the benefit of your organization, strategically, tactically, financially, etc. So that's what you get paid for. And my point is that I think what Roosevelt was trying to get across was that you in a leadership position have to be willing to step out there and get your face dirty, right? Who does, as he said, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood and strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but you strive to do the deeds. When we were still thinking about the concept of building multiple global security operations centers, GSOCs, and a lot of you know this story, so that we could have a seamless network of security operations that would be interconnected, interoperable, and that would provide true global coverage, true redundancy of operations, and interoperability. And again, that was a bold move on the part of our organization to do that. And could it have failed? Sure, if we didn't do our homework in terms of making sure that the technology we wanted to employ was the right technology, that our strategy was sound, that we had the buy-in from the field, that they would be willing to support something like this because they felt there was a need, and also our ability to evangelize this GSOC concept to our leadership and up the chain of command all the way to then CEO Steve Ballmer. And so in any of those areas, had we not kind of done our homework and done the right things, effort could have failed, right? But the idea is that you have to try. And if you're trying for the worthy cause, in this case, our cause was making sure that we had the best technology, you had the best people, and the best strategy to protect Microsoft people, property, assets globally. I mean, that's what we get paid for. So the ability to drive on a program like that, which was successful, is worth the cost, right? And I kind of hark back to the book. I always go back to the book, and in the book, for those of you who haven't read it, and I of course encourage all of you to pick up the book. It's available on Amazon and Kindle, and We're doing an audiobook pretty soon, and you can also order it from MikeHowardAuthor.com. But one of the seminal moments in my life, in my career, leadership career, was when I wasn't a leader, and I was a police officer in Oakland, California. And I won't reiterate the story because I've done it before on air like this. But needless to say, I made an arrest, and I used a section of the penal code that I thought was applicable as opposed to one that was normally used, because I thought it'd be another tool to get some bad actors off the streets. Turned out to be the wrong thing. My then Sergeant Nishihara asked to meet with me shortly thereafter and told me they had to cut the suspects loose. And again, this is kind of really tied directly to what we're talking about here is, and those of you know the story already, then pardon my repetition, but he admonished me for the bad arrest. But he also said he understood why I did it and the rationale behind it. It was not anything malicious. It was my youthful 21-year-old rookie zeal as a police officer to get some bad actors off the streets. And then he kind of mentored me for a little bit, telling me about next time you have an issue like this, a question about this, just contact me. I'll be happy to help you out. And, I thought I was going to get written up. I was going to be, I was going to be in trouble or something. And he just kind of, proverbially wiped the dust off my shoulders and said, go forth and sin no more, right? But that particular act psychologically made me understand that there is worth in effort. And it did not make me gun shy in the future to try different things for fear that I might fail. Or I might get criticized because I tried something that maybe people thought was stupid, right? If you are in a leadership position, you will be criticized. People will not like your opinions. They may not like your personality. They may not like your strategy or where you're going. And especially if you are managing, obviously you're a leader, you're managing people, you're having to do performance reviews. Not all performance reviews are hunky-dory. You wish that all of them were great, but there are always going to be situations where someone's performance is not up to snuff, and they may get a lower ranking, and that's kind of just the way it is. That's part of your job, right? Or you may unfortunately end up having to terminate somebody, fire somebody. Those people may not necessarily be looking at you in the most positive light. But this is not a popularity contest. Your job is to treat everybody fairly, equally, give them the ability to succeed, give them the tools to succeed. But your job is to make the critical decisions. And those decisions are not always going to be liked by everybody. So I think that the point of this podcast and what Roosevelt was really trying to say is that you do not want to be one of those, quote, cold and timid souls who know neither victory or defeat. Colin Powell had in one of his leadership books, there was a formula that he had about decision making, and basically it was like, if you have 70% of information at hand, go ahead, make the decision. If you have less than 20, you may not want to make that decision. You may want to reconsider, maybe take some time. But he used the word, I know I'm butchering it. It's in French called l'audace. Be audacious, because there are times when you just have to pull the trigger and just go with a bold move, even if some of your folks don't believe that's the right way to go. And I'm not talking about, I'm in charge, therefore I know everything, and it's my ego, and so I'm just going to go for it. No. You know me well enough to know that, again, I believe in consensus. I believe in getting everybody's opinion on critical decisions, so that I, just like a judge who's trying to determine from the prosecution side or the defense attorney side, the body of evidence and trying to determine, okay, what's the best decision in this particular case. It's the same thing in business. And so I want to get all this information, but I make the decision. And 50% of the folks may not like it, and 50% of the folks may like it. And you just have to learn to develop a thick skin. One of the things I would recommend to help in this process for those leaders who are kind of loath to be criticized or are afraid of criticism is to invest in emotional intelligence training. One of the things we did when we were building our leadership team in Microsoft Global Security was invest in a couple of, EQ, as they call it, sessions. A great friend of mine named Mitch Shepard, who runs a company called Dynamic Solutions, as well as she's also working on some other areas in terms of diversity and inclusion. She gave us our first sessions, and I remember clear as a bell. We were offsite at a hotel, and we had filled out questionnaires and stuff before that. But the big part of the session was for the team. And again, we were still growing. We knew each other. I think we were friends. But and I was the boss. But we still were still trying to figure it out. To the team cohesiveness and how to gel. And part of it was for them to go around and to give me direct feedback. Hey boss, think you're doing X, Y, and Z well. Think you could be better at this. And I think the consistency around there was they felt I was doing well as a boss. They liked working for me, but they felt I was too subtle. Right? I wasn't direct enough about telling them which way to go. It was more like okay, this is what I think. Hoping that they would get it right. And I know that style worked for some people, but it didn't work for others. And that was part of my growth as a leader to learn to be more direct. And then I remember I left the room for about an hour where they each gave feedback on each other, and then they brought me back in. And nobody likes to hear, criticism, but that's part of the process of growing as a leader, to be able to take constructive criticism, to use it to build your leadership toolkit to make you better and stronger as a leader. And, malicious criticism and that kind of stuff, that's the whole different category. I think the point I'm trying to get across is it's going to happen. Sometimes that criticism will be unfair, but sometimes that criticism will be needed criticism that will help, as I said, sharpen your leadership toolkit and make you a better leader. And in those cases, you have to put your ego aside and be able to take that feedback, take that criticism, be introspective with yourself, to really be honest with yourself and say, hey, yeah, maybe they're right. In fact, no, not maybe they're right. They are right. I guess I can be a little bit too subtle, thinking that they are going to get it, when I should just tell them, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I want you to do, which I got really good at. And then there are going to be those times when you get the criticism that's unwarranted for whatever reasons, and that you have to be like a duck with water. Just let it wash over you. It's going to happen. Move on, right? If you know that this is going to be part of the leadership journey, then you're ready for it. It may hurt, it may sting for a little bit, but just move on. As Roosevelt said before, he talked about folks who were aloof and criticized. And what did he say? The poorest way to face life is to face it with a sneer, a cynical habit of thought and speech, a readiness to criticize work which the critic himself never tries to perform, an intellectual aloofness which will not accept contact with life's realities. All these are marks, not of superiority, but of weakness. I agree wholeheartedly. There's always people out there that are going to try to criticize you as a leader, especially if you're trying to make some big, bold moves or making some changes in an organization that needs change or needs fixing. But those same people are never going to be the ones that want to step in your shoes and make those critical decisions. It's just easier to criticize from afar. You don't want to be those kinds of folks. You want to be the person, the man, the woman, in the breach, taking in all the facts, taking the risks, being challenged, but also being able to make those decisions that go to the betterment of your organization, of your people, your troops. That's one of the true elements and essence of leadership. So those of you who are now in a leadership position who are facing criticism, whether it be from on high, or whether it be from subordinates, or whether it be from peers, every so often take a look at this Teddy Roosevelt quote. Examine yourself, and if you truly are doing the things for the right reasons, if you've truly taken in all the advice from people that you need to take advice from to help you make whatever decisions or whatever path you want to take with your team and your business unit, your organization, then accept the criticism and move forward boldly and go for it. Not everything's going to be a win. Part of life is also learning how to lose. But if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing strategically with the right mindset, the right emotions, you're going to win and you're going to get to those strategic goals despite the critics. And remember, the critics are the ones that are never going to want to be in your shoes. They think they can be, but not willing to do that, right? They're not willing to make the effort or put themselves on the line for that. Leadership comes with a price. Sometimes that's a target on your back, and that's just the way it is. If you want to be a leader, you're never going to escape that fact. But you should embrace it, because most of leadership is also being able to see, the fruits of your labor, the strategic goals that have been met, the direct reports of the team that you've built, that you see them grow and you see them grow their careers, and you see, as they're being fulfilled in their career, being fulfilled in their family and home lives, and because they're really happy with their career, and you see yourself growing as a leader and being willing to take chances and doing things that you thought you would never do and stretching yourself. Those are all, things that are doable and are lofty goals for leadership. Just accept the criticism. Take the criticism that you really feel and believe were meant from a place of trying to help you and give you positive feedback so you can get better as a leader. And then discount all the other garbage of people who are jealous, envious, who really don't have a strategic bone in their body, but they think they do. And again, who would never be in your position, but they think they should be in your position. They think they can have that position, but they neither have the mindset nor the intestinal fortitude to be in that position. So that's kind of the thoughts I'm leaving for you. Those are the thoughts, I should say, that I'm leaving for you today. Not a long podcast, but I'd love to hear your feedback on it. But again, I've been a proponent of reading leadership books for a long time. That's why I quoted Powell, that thing about Ladouce. If you think you have a goal and you really need to go for it at times. But ultimately, leadership is a great journey. And there are days when it's going to be harder than others, right? But ultimately, it's a hard journey. So there are people who have come before you, not just me, but obviously there's a whole litany of leadership resources that you can go to. You find the leadership folks that you want to follow, and you follow them. You read their books, you learn from their mistakes, read biographies. I guarantee you read biographies, you're going to find that most of the famous folks in the world, they obviously had a lot of critics. They had failures. They tried certain endeavors that didn't work, but they also tried other endeavors that worked very well and actually propelled them to heights of greatness, as well as hopefully serving the greater good. So just kind of remember that. And please, I'd love to hear your feedback on this one, especially those of you who are facing criticism. The thing that helped me the most when I was facing criticism was I'd go look at my library of books. I'd take out stuff from Jack Welch, Colin Powell, Gandhi, Golda Meir, what have you, and I would just look at and kind of find places where they were facing similar situations. They had similar angst. They had a lot of people kind of criticizing them, gunning for them, but they were able to figure out and go forward, make it work, become stronger, become bolder, become better leaders, and also at the same time taking care of the people that they have the charge of taking care of. Resources there at your disposal. And again, I'm always there at your disposal. If you need to bounce anything off of me, you can go to my website. It tells you right there how to get a hold of me. Happy to help any of you out. And of course, I've always told my team the importance of mentoring, but being mentored, and that in my mentoring relationships, I always learned just as much from my mentees as I hope they've learned from me. So with that, I wish you all a great rest of the week. I hope you got something out of this podcast. Again, if you like what you're listening to, please hit the subscribe button on the screen, and also tell your friends and colleagues about the podcast. We really want to grow our audience, and we can't do that unless we get your feedback and get your support. So until next time, this is the Art of Ronin Leadership Podcast. This is Mike Howard from Las Vegas, Nevada, signing off, wishing you great leadership and also a wonderful, wonderful week and wonderful life. Take care. Bye.